So I'm going to go to preferences here. I'm going to press menu, hit that one time, and come to here and I'll hit preferences right there. Now here in preferences, you can see there's a pretty long list here, and this will help you out a lot when setting up your MPC Key 61. Now, of course, the first option here is info. We have the AKAI Professional here, the logo, then the MPC OS logo. Below here we have the MPC firmware. Now my current firmware here, of course, is obviously 2.11.4. Okay, and then this is the serial number of the device. And then here is a control surface version, which is 1.39. Now if I want to update my MPC Key 61, I'll just press update here. I'll go to online update. Now I already have an Ethernet cable plugged into here, which makes it much more easier, and I can automatically see it. If it needs to be updated, I press OK, either way, to update or to say, yes, I understand you are running the latest version of MPC, so that's okay, no problem. I can also reset my preferences. I prefer to keep my preferences where they are. I've already updated this machine for this video. Now, we'll go back to here, activate plugins. Some of you guys may have plugins or don't have plugins, you want to activate them. They could be in your account. So generally you would just log into here. And now, since I am online, the InMusic brand appears here. So what I'm going to do, I put my phone, I got an iPhone here. I'm going to put this iPhone on this, write this QR code so I get a good view of it. I am in photo. So be careful if you end up getting into video. And there it says AKAI Pro. Now I'll just select that. Okay, there, I'll hit that with my finger. Takes me to AKAI Pro device. Enter the code display. Now below activation, we have here Wi-Fi under activate plugins. And of course, Wi-Fi is very simple. If you have Wi-Fi, you should know how to set it up. I'm currently using Ethernet, but it's pretty simple. You would go to on here. It's looking for the Wi-Fi devices that are currently in this area. Cool. And if I have a device and it does have the code, I just take connect. So I'm not putting the password in. There's no need. I have Ethernet. And you come right here under Wi-Fi, you'll see I have Ethernet. So enabled, status available. It says connecting, and now you see it has the DNS, it has the gateway, the subnet mask, and of course the IP address right there. Under Ethernet we have Bluetooth. Now I have never seen a Bluetooth device work for any MPC of the newer ones, whether it's MPC 1, MPC 2. I don't even use Bluetooth for this thing. So I tried headsets, that didn't work, so maybe in the future it will work, I do not know. But I'll put on, and we're gonna look to see if it can pair devices somewhere. So it's looking for devices to pair up to, and it's taking a while here, and it should actually see them that real quickly actually. But it's taken a while to find some sort of Bluetooth device to pair with. I've got a bunch of them here in my office, so we'll see that another day. We have audio device. So I have audio device internal, right? 32 inputs and outputs. So I have internal. Let's click on this here. I'll double tap right there, and all we have is internal. So I don't have any sort of extra card plugged into my MPC Key 61. I'm just going to use the audio device that's internal, so I can go inputs or outputs into my MPC Key 61. Now next we have MIDI sync. So we can do MIDI and we can sync devices up. As you can see, here's a keyboard, a port, here's global, here's tracks right here. I can come to here for MIDI port, and this is remote. And this is all the input ports. Then we have here the MIDI port and remote here for the output ports, right? And I can enable MIDI ports when discovered. So once it finds them, we can enable those automatically. See, so make sure when you do go to a particular screen here on your preferences to always scroll up or down like right now. Now we see more information. MIDI control mode output. Pretty simple. Output MIDI. We can also receive sync. So this is sync receive on. This is off currently. Ableton start stop sync. Receive MIDI machine control MMC. Then here we have sync send. Send off. Put it on when you want to send sync out. And I would send MIDI sync. Click that on. I could send MTC, which is MIDI time code. And that's the frame rate would be, which is great for film. And here we also have our start point for linking up a film to MTC film rate. So I need to know the start point, and I put it right there. And then next here, we have MIDI input, filter, all notes off, CC. And then we have program change, on or off. I come to here, I click on that. We have program, sequence, and track. So I can have the program do the control change, or the sequence, or any specific track. And that's MIDI sync. The setup we have here is for hardware. And of course, see hardware here, we have our pad threshold levels and sensitivity for our pads. So we got our pads, of course, and then we can set the sensitivity level. I never change this. I leave the pads on my MPC, any MPC, set the way that they actually come out the factory. I've never had a problem with that, but if you do, you can change your sensitivity level or your threshold level, meaning how hard you strike the pad, how is that going to respond in terms of triggering that keyboard sound or triggering that sample or sound. Then we have a curve, our pad curve. Whether I hold it down for a long period of time or I hit it hard, we want to set a curve to how that actually works. In this case, A works great for me. In threshold level, 8. And also in pad sensitivity, 8 as well. And of course, we have pad velocity. So if I hit a pad, I'm hitting the pad now, I'm holding it down. I'm off of that pad. But now you'll see aftertouch. We see the velocity was hard and the aftertouch. I'll just tap the pad this next time. Ooh, and I got less of an aftertouch right there. Now this works really good when you don't have full level on. If I put full level on, no matter what I tap, it's going to be the same way. I turn full level off, I'm good to go. So we'll see the velocity and the aftertouch. Now below this, we have our screen dimming. So if you are not playing your MPC Key 61 for 5 minutes, the screen will dim. Now currently I'm recording this video, and it looks even better for me when I have the screen that we're looking at here, brightness in night mode. And I can change it. I can come to here, right here. I can do day. And there's day mode. I don't want to record in day mode, so I come back to here, double tap that, go back to night mode. Night mode looks much better. Now we have 2 taps. I can do whatever I want to do for tap tempo. I can tap it 3 times and it will give me that after those 3 taps, it'll average out what that tempo was, or BPM, beats per minute. And I can have a flashing light for my tempo or not. I prefer the flashing light because it's just a reminder of how fast the tempo is. You can set it the way you want. Now below here we have, this is general, and this is bank button press. So my bank buttons will press selected A through D. Shift plus Q-Link press equals Q-Link edit. So I can change these parameters too. I can come to here and I can do that. Well, I can just do cycle backwards, which I don't want to do. I prefer to do this right here. Let's go back to hardware. Scroll back up. And we're right here again. But you can make your own settings. And same here for the A through D for my pad banks. I can select and toggle the pad banks. And here at the bottom, we have global pitch bend settings. So there's a pitch bend, right? And so you have these global settings you can use to how much you actually push that pitch bend wheel and get a response in terms of range up or range down. In this case, I'm using 2. But this depends on what type of keyboard player you are, or whether you aren't a keyboard player, how you want to set it for doing pitch bending with the MPC KEY. You should adjust this to what you like. Then here also we have the date. The current date is September the 24th, and that's 2022. Gives the time and the hour. And of course, the time zone location. Okay, now here we have sequencer mode, right? And so I have this playback thing, which is called instant track mute. So instant track mute is like an old thing to do with my old MPC, and I can have that on. Play track mute and solo events, which is on also as well. So next we have here project defaults. Now the first option here is new project dialog, a demo. So I can have a demo load, right? And see just demos. So I turn the machine on, I'll see all the demos as you normally would see them. I can come to here though, I'll be able to see 3 different categories. I'll see the demos, a template, which will be just all the demo sounds, but not the demo sequence. And then we have recent. That means if I made a project, that recent will also appear on the first page. Now the next default here is the tempo. That means whenever I turn on the machine, the default tempo when I start a brand new project will be 120. It's 120 BPMs, right? So this next one is global. Now, if I select global, what happens is that if I make a sequence, the next, and a sequence, let's say, is going to be 90 BPM. I make a brand new, another sequence, this next one, that's going to be 90 BPM as well. That means every sequence in the machine will be 90 BPM. It'll be default globally through the entire machine. If I deselect that, when I make a brand new sequence, it's going to be 120. Then I can change the tempo at that point when I start making that sequence. So I prefer to turn on the global only when I'm going to make a brand new song and all the parts and sequences are going to be the same BPM. Now next here we have our sequence defaults. So the default's going to be 2 bars. I can change this. I come here, tap there, I can turn my data wheel. I can select the number of bars I want to have always when the default comes up. Time signature is 4/4. The numerator will be 4 and the denominator will be 4. So that's 4/4 time signature. Let's say I want to do 3/4. So I come to here, I can do a waltz, a 3/4. Here's 4/4, standard. And then we have our program default. So default pad slice is pad. That means that slice goes to a pad. Or all there. 2 options. Next I have default drum group filter. So I can pick the type of filter I want to use for the drums, or a filter for that drum program. The default filter. I can change that here, but here generally it's going to be a 2. Sometimes I might change this, but not particularly right now. You should keep it probably the way it is. And then when you start actually working with your MPC KEY, you'll adjust it to what you feel is best for your project. Then we have default plugin is the Fabric XL. That's my default synth plugin. So the first synth that comes up in the system is that. I can also come to here and select another one. Or can we? Let's open that up. Sure can. Here we go. I can do bass, electric, Fabric Key Piano, Fabric Piano, Fabric XL, Fabric, Hype, Mellotron. Oh, it's all here. So I'll stick with Fabric XL. I'll just use my data wheel to do that. I push the data wheel in, it opens up this parameter right here. As long as this is red. Everybody's got to deal with is saving your data. Okay, you're working on a project, you like it, and you're not saving every 5 minutes. Your friend walks in, trips over the cable. The cable unplugs the machine cuts off. Okay, you're going to lose everything you did right there, pretty much, if you didn't save your data. Now, what they have here is autosave. If I click on this, it will autosave every 10 minutes. And you can change that. I'll push this data wheel in, and here we go. I can do 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, or 1 minute. I can save every 10 minutes. I'll set this to 5 minutes. I prefer that. Then also, there's a template. I can make my own template, have a template here to load. That means when I actually start my MPC Key 61 up, I can have a template that I would load automatically for me to start a project. The next option here is going to be record export. That says record export right here. And we have recording bit depth. So this is a bit depth of the recording process. It's going to record something internally inside the system. It's going to record at 16-bit. Or I can change it to 24-bit. And 16 is the default. Next we have audio device. So here in my audio device, I can include program volume and pan settings. So I'm going to make sure that these settings are always going to be included in the operation of the MPC Key 61. Below that here we have bypass program effects plugins. Now I don't want to bypass the effects, maybe a reverb, a compressor, it could be a delay, it could be a gate, or a de-esser for vocals. But I do not want to bypass that information when I'm actually going to dump out a file or something. So I'm going to make sure that when I export the file, that I'm going to have the bypass program effects plugin not checked. Only if I want to just send out just a version of my project that has no effects on it. Next we have audio tail. This is very important. Sometimes you have effects like a reverb, echo, and it continues on and on, right? But when it comes to an end of a song and it sort of has a tail end, you may want to give it just that 1 second so it just doesn't cut off. It sort of dies out. You may have a fading there, but you want to make sure that it just doesn't stop. You want to make sure it just cuts off so it gives it a little tail, an audio tail to the end of that little export. Now here we have an audio export as well. I got a song. I got track 1, track 2, track 3. Track 1 is the drums. Track 2 is the keyboard. Track 3 is the bass line. Track 4 could be guitar. So in this case, I would export just track 1, which would be the drums, and I would make sure we're going to export audio track. If I have an entire sequence, I would come to here. I would set up the entire program for that sequence. Under audio tail length, which is 1, you can actually extend this out. You'll see this here next to audio tail length. I can actually increase the number of seconds. It's just 1 second there. I can make it more for the effects to sustain and to degrade. So it makes it easier to add a longer audio tail length. Let's do it, it's done. I'll leave it at 1 in this case. Below here we have the audio export. Now, when I export a file, it means I'm going to make a file and export it. Let's see, I'm using some other software like Pro Tools or Logic, some bigger DAW, digital audio workstation. I want to send maybe track 1 is the drums, track 2 is the piano, 3 is the bass, 4 is the guitar, right? So I might want to just send that program, and that program would be track 1. So I may want to send that program out, or from the data wheel, I can send track or program or the main out. The main would mean everything. Left and right, master output would be sent out. So I want to send something to somebody to say that would give them a track to get an idea what it sounds like, to either write some lyrics to. I would probably use the main out. If I'm just going to send a part out I want to send to make stems, I would just send the track out, or in some cases, just a program. I'll leave it on track. We have MIDI export. I'll click right here. I can export the MIDI data for a track. Let's say I played keyboards. And all the keyboard parts for that one track would be MIDI data. You would know which keys I pressed, how long I held those keys down for, all that. I want to export that information to use it in another sequence, it will say. Well, I would select track. I can also select sequence. That means the entire sequence. I can have the drums, piano, bass, guitar, horns, trumpets, all that stuff I've got in there. It could be 16 tracks. It will export all 16 MIDI tracks in a full sequence export. I'll leave it on track. Now when you bounce a file out, we have a bounce bit depth of 24. You can see there's no dialog box for that, so it's going to be 24 always. Now the next option we have here is general. I get to general here. We have the first option here, which is main outputs. Vintage mode set to MPC 60. That's the very first MPC 60 that Roger Lin made for AKAI in Japan when AKAI first started out. That has its own flavor as well. Next we have the SP1200, an older EMU or Ensoniq device made by a company called Ensoniq, but they called it EMU, was the company for the SP1200. And this device here has a great sound, a classic hip-hop sound, and probably rock too as well back in the day when people used it. Very strong drum sound, so this gives it that flavor. And we also have the SP1200 ring, which is a classic sound of that device that made it very famous. I can set any one of these 4 different vintage modes. In this case, when you first use it, I make sure none is selected. Now next here we have the audition and preview. So when you go to, let's say you go to your browser and you want to hear back something and it plays back that demo that you hear back. Well, what you want to do is you can set this to how long you want to hear it back for. I'll push that in here. And I'll make it more like 15 seconds. That's all I really want to hear, 15 seconds, no more than that. I can make a decision after that whether I like that demo or the sounds in that demo. And you can adjust this audio autoplay demo length right here. Next we have audition output. So this is audition outputs. And here I'm using 1 and 2, which is my main output. I never change that. It's pretty simple. It goes to your master. We have Cue preview and we have Splice preview. I have no need to check out the Cue preview or the Splice preview. Now below here we have the warp and BPM detect. Now what this is, detects the BPM. Let's say for example the song is 120 BPM beats per minute. What happens here is that there's an algorithm in here. It's an audio warp algorithm. Let's say for example I want to check out to make sure this sequence or loop I have will match the current song. What this does here, it makes sure that this is set to Pro 10 so that it'll have the power to use of the chip inside to make sure it can utilize that power to make sure it can get that warp engine to match the speed of whatever the BPM is. This is important, particularly when using loops or bringing a vocal in from the record or something, or having a different vocal come in that's a sample. You're going to make sure it's going to be in time. For example, I may have a singer, she's singing a track, and she could be in C. But her voice is bad, so we can't use it that day. You might want to use something else. What we'll normally do is we'll just turn the pitch down. And those vocals that were already recorded will go down in pitch. And then that person can sing to the current pitch in case your voice wasn't good enough to work for that day. You might have had a cold or something. You never know. But this is a great device to use. And of course, you really can't change it. So it's right there on your MPC Key 61. And it's the audio warp algorithm. And it's at the Pro 10, the max. The very last option we have here is Splice. So Splice is a company. They have samples and loops and all kind of stuff in there that you can get. And you can actually work with Splice with your MPC Key 61. But I don't use Splice. I prefer to use my own samples and sounds. And Splice is good pretty much if you want to start out and doing stuff. But recently there have been problems with using the MPC, the Live 2, the X, and the 1. There's been problems with Splice and trying to hook it up from what I've seen on the internet. And the problem will be if Splice, let's say, stops working one day, you never know when a company might just go boom, bust.